X-Men, the Apocalypse. Is this the final film for X-Men? We're here tonight at Bryan Theaters watching X-Men Apocalypse. Third in the new trilogy with the younger cast of the X-Men from the original trilogy. When this movie was announced and they did like the previews and stuff, I was super skeptical because I'm like, Apocalypse is like a big deal. You want to do it right. You might look maybe cheesy or corny. I gotta say though, for me, 90s kid watching the cartoon and knowing just like the important stuff with that, I liked it. They did a fantastic job. As far as a trilogy set of movies, 1, 2, and 3, awesome. The Horsemen of the Apocalypse aren't what you think. They kind of took from the Ultimate Timeline and the original timeline and kind of molded it into a new thing. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Jennifer Lawrence, I feel kind of phoned this one in a little bit. She's like, all right, whatever, I'll do a third one. But all the other characters, your Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Nightcrawler, Quicksilver, dude. The payoff for me was towards the end. There's an amazing scene in the end that is, to me, worth the price of admission because you finally got to see something that you've waited years to see, and it's about damn time. If you've seen the other preview for X-Men, this one, you know Wolverine's in it, and I gotta say, the audience lost their shit when Wolverine came on the scene. Oh my god, dude. So yeah, you got some hype, some good stuff, some awesome action. Let's be honest, graphics these days, special effects, they're pretty much top-notch. The acting's good, the characters are good. Just a little bit with Jennifer Lawrence phoning it in, and just a little tiny smidgen bit of just maybe a little too much dialogue, but at the same time, it was good dialogue, really depth. It was like an onion. Magneto, we get a whole another realm with him. I love that. Michael Fassbender as young Magneto, super dope. Loved it. All in all, I'm gonna give the movie a solid 9 out of 10. Did have some accuracies in there, did have some inaccuracies in there, but honestly, right now, I feel the comic book movies are finally starting to pay attention to more detail and starting to do things a little right as opposed to Wolverine and Sabretooth, your brothers. Deadpool, we're going to sew your mouth shut and make you have really weird eyes and swords out of your arms, and hopefully nobody will care. To see what the other mutants had to say, let's check that out right now.
Much to my surprise, I didn't care for the movie. There were a lot of points in this movie that left me either not immersed in the movie, breaking any immersion I might have had in the movie, or just flat out rolling my eyes. Some of the choices they made with Apocalypse and the level of his powers I think are ridiculous. The idea of what he can do for other mutants is just asinine. It was just stupid. I understand he's supposed to be a mutant god, and I remember what he was in the comic books. He's very, very powerful. I mean, the dude's immortal, for God's sake. They took him too far. At least I feel they took him too far.
Frankly, I was not impressed with that particular character. This movie was so much about that villain, and there was parts of it I was kind of like, he's supposed to be this super powerful villain. What's his problem been? Well, he's just kind of a rock got on him and he couldn't get out of the rock for hundreds of years. That's how powerful he is. I'm like, okay, I'm a little lost. And then he shows up and he's sort of like Frankenstein's monster, superpowers, false god, fire bad. And the makeup, the prosthetic, it was like the Smurfs with a Power Rangers villain. I mean, I'm not interested. This is really boring to me. There's no motivation. There's no explanation. The powers just change all over the place. You never know what he can do.
I love Marvel. I'm bigger on Marvel than I am DC. DC's just letting me down all over the place. There's a lot of this movie that I did love. I did love a lot of the actors, and I loved the costumes because when I was watching it, Jubilee's costume was so much like the 90s cartoon, and you had all their suits at the end that were so much like the 90s cartoons, and it was so accurate. It had some nostalgia for us in our 20s and 30s of the 90s cartoon. They did. I don't know why, but I read somewhere or I heard somewhere that Oscar Isaacs was the main point of this movie that was good. That was so inaccurate. That's so inaccurate. I thought his prosthetics were really bad. He was overdone. He was overkill. Going from, something so big like Star Wars to this was, you were expecting more from him. I expected so much more from him that I didn't get. He was a disappointing villain.
This movie had its ups and downs. Acting was good from McAvoy and Fassbender, who played Magneto and Professor X. Golden as always. My favorite character, same as Nick, is of course Quicksilver. And I'm glad they let him shine and gave him his moments in this movie, and which included one of the most complex looking visual effects shots I'd ever seen since the movie Gravity. The story-wise, it has ups and downs as too. Again, not as good as Days of Future Past, but I felt they lacked depth. They were trying to go for something, but you have so much of this action and visual effects, it can be really hard to balance the two. I think Bryan Singer and the writers did their best, but I think this movie leaned more towards visual spectacle than it did for story and acting.
There were a number of people that I felt did a horrible job acting in this movie. Jean Grey, I always forget her name. I know she's in Game of Thrones. I thought she was horrible. she had like zero emotion. She's in these scenes that have like deep emotion, and she's like straight face. I didn't see anything in her acting at all to portray what was going on. Jennifer Lawrence, her acting was not very good in this movie either. Now on the flip side of that, Fassbender did an amazing job in this movie. His acting was on point. There are some very emotional scenes with him in it, and it was on point. McAvoy did a good job too. He's very good in that role. I feel he's just as good in a different way as Stewart is in that role. I really like the two of them and the way their dynamic works together. Favorite character of the entire movie was Quicksilver. I don't know if they had just one genius writing Quicksilver's parts alone, because he obviously didn't write the rest of the movie, but it was really, really funny. Everything he did was golden. From the moment he enters the action to the moment he's quipping towards the end, everything that came out of that character's mouth was golden.
There's a lot of good characters. Some of the same ones from the last two films. Michael Fassbender's Magneto, always really strong. James McAvoy as Professor X is amazing. The problem with putting more and more characters is you give less and less screen time to those people. There were times when I think they really wanted us to care. There are people that die in this movie. Some of them it's really supposed to be emotional. And I never once found myself getting emotional. It was like, oh wow, that person died. That's pretty bad.
I love James McAvoy. He's just shine in everything that he's done. I love Michael Fassbender in anything he does. What he touches is gold. I do love Evan Peters. You have all these amazing young actors, and they do such a good job on those portions of the movie that I did feel let down. But I am such a fan that it was good. I'm very conflicted with this movie. I'm finding.
I found myself bored and thinking, do I like this movie? I don't know if I like this movie. And when you're thinking about that in the middle of the movie, the answer is probably no.
It's still better than some of the other X-Men movies. It's not at the bottom for me, so I still recommend it, especially if you're an X-Men fan. I think there's a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of hidden things, a lot of awesome moments that were revealed that definitely got me excited, but overall, pretty disappointed.
There was points in the story where it was high, there's points in the story where it's low, and I'm very conflicted on this movie.
So then with all that said and your confliction, do you think you can give us on a scale 1 to 10?
I could give it a 7 because if you did like the 90s cartoon and you did think that was pretty cool, you would go into it and you'd be like, oh, that's neat, that's interesting, but if you were disappointed by Age of Ultron, you'll be disappointed by this movie.
I'm going to give it a 7.5 for lack of story and emotional depth, but a visual spectacle, not boring to me. I enjoyed it through and through, and they bring in the original X2 music like they do in Days of Future Past, and the title sequence, which I love. I love it when they do that. X2 and Days of Future Past and this movie have all the same stylistic title sequences, although X1 had it, but the theme, they used the X2 theme again, which I love that consistency.
I feel bad, but I really have to give it a 6. It's a long movie, there's a lot of stuff in it, but the majority of it really left me cold. I think it's still worth seeing if you're an X-Men fan, but sorry, gotta be a 6.
6.5. I feel that the movie let me down. I came into this movie wanting a specific thing. I came into this movie looking to see Apocalypse realized on the screen. Apocalypse is pretty iconic when it comes to comic books. They twisted him into something that was not Apocalypse.
What is your favorite X-Men in the movies, all of them that you've seen? And then which ones are you hoping to see in the future? Because there is a Wolverine 3 coming out. I'm pretty sure there'll be another X-Men because there is something at the end of the credit. So stay to the end. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. Like this video, favorite it. With all that said, you heard it here at the source. To see what the other mutants... God, dude. I thought you were going to do something, so I was like, wait.
I thought you were going to Anything else?
Off record, he can give power to give me a break. Honestly, that was the most obnoxious theater I've been in a long time.
I know.
Extremely
God.
obnoxious. Somehow there was a dog in the theater, and the dog was more well behaved than any kid in that theater.
Like
Stupid
that-
kid behind
like
me
that-
kept kicking my seat.
Yeah, I get King Pink too. I'm
Like
like,
that obnoxious
so
kid
annoying.
that's like,
Yeah. This is not your living room, bitch.
Do you know what I want to say to her? Watch a goddamn movie before it comes.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Michael, you put that in there with Nick. You
a
put
lot of
that
that
in
in
there.
here.
This is not your living room.
I'm gonna